All right.
I mean, in Christianity, the fruits of Christianity, go through all the statistics I mentioned. They're the most happiest. Science verifies that, God gives people purpose, and they have intrinsic purpose.
This is basically, when it boils down to it, it's Lucifer.
Yep, down
because
where
he's
the rubber
getting
meets
ready
the
for
road.
and he's getting ready for his entrance.
Yes, he is.
And the argument in this debate is really about, would Noah's Ark work? And I think I've already made the case that Noah's Ark would work, that a ship that size could be built out of wood and would be seaworthy, as testified to by a world-class shipping firm in South Korea.
The Bible talks about all man being created from the rib. Human beings, no primate, only human beings. You remove a rib, they can grow back. That's pretty profound. There's the odds that human language can't arise on its own. All empirical evidence shows that it can't, but Adam was taught language, it says.
I would say that based on, the fact that we inherit 100 new mutations per person per individual, you take that genetic entropy back to a point of least genetic entropy. I don't know exactly what they look like. I can't really draw you a picture, but that would be a genome of, for one, created diversity without any, mutational load, genetic load. So
basically what we're asking you to do is to ground intelligibility or rationality of some normative X, whatever it is. And then give us a grounding paradigmatically. That is at a more foundational level.
Shalom Erev Tov Elohim Lanu Machse Va'oz Ezra Vet Sarot Nim Sameh Od. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Psalms 46:1. Yo, what's up, Matt? Nice to have you in here. So I got a special guest with me tonight, Mr. Brass. But last night we were doing the same thing, and there's internet problems. So hopefully that's resolved tonight. I think it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're going to be discussing. We're going back in time here, and we're going to be kind of reflecting on some an old last year's discussion with Josh Bowen and also Skylar Fiction. And I've had time to reflect. So this is going to make a reflection period, and that's why this is what the arguments I'd like to bring up if I could redo the conversation. But see, that's part of growing in knowledge and stuff, so we're excited. I'm excited to have Mr. Brass add his input as well. So yeah, we're going to start off where we did last night. So hopefully there's no internet troubles tonight, problems. So you ready to go, Brass, or what?
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
There we go. Here's our guest. Praise that I am. What's up, man? How are you tonight?
Hey, good evening, guys.
Hey, good. We're glad to have you on here, man. What can we call you? Should we just call you Praise that I am, or do you want to give us a name?
Can you hear that? Because, I'm not sure. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Sweet.
And we can call you?
Just Praise. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, Praise. So usually we start the show by having you kind of introduce yourself, say hello, tell us a little bit about you, if you have a channel or all that kind of fun stuff. So why don't we start by doing that?
I kind of have a lone channel I do a few videos on, but most of my work is done on a guy named JMD Apologetics. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He has about 800 followers. Yeah, last night I did a shout out to JMD. So yo, JMD. And Brass knows a lot about JMD. They've interacted for a while. So yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. And like I was saying last night, he got me going with getting online with my channel and stuff. So I have a lot to give him thanks for that. So yeah. I'll have to send this to JMD afterwards too. So we'll keep on going. Followers or so. And
I can put him on Facebook actually.
Yeah, and I contribute to his channel mostly. But I do a few videos on mine, and I did run across your guys, so I thought I'd respond. And I guess it could have been misconstrued, as being disrespectful or something. I didn't want that to happen. That was not my intention. Yep, I'll say it again. Like last night, what I was saying was for correction, edification, reproof, everything that Paul called us to do. So I think that, I mean, it was in the spirit of that. And when things get, like I said, heated up, then I guess things happen. So, like, I guess it got heated in this conversation. So we'll keep on going.
To Josh especially.
Well, no, I don't think we're too worried about being disrespected, but I thought we would have you on to kind of talk about some of your arguments, some of the stuff you thought we got wrong. Since you're the guest, maybe you could choose the first thing you'd like to go over when we're talking about slavery and where you think Josh and I really got it wrong.
Okay. Well, first, I think atheists like to paint the Mosaic covenant like the social, economic system and compare it to antebellum slavery or Egyptian slavery. And I think that's that's an unfair comparison.
Yeah, and I was bringing this up to you last night, Brass, that the criteria for slavery, the word slavery, by the dictionary, and I'll probably have to do in a second, repeat it, but it includes involuntary coercion.
Servitude.
Yeah. So I think they need to be more consistent with the traditional definition, or they have to add, or just redefine, or just make their own claim and say this is what I think, and it's inhumane or something like that. So I think they need to be and stop equivocating terms and just saying it's slavery because that's how you feel it, like it's like an emotionally. That's how you emotionally feel. See, emotions have nothing to do with dictionary definitions. So I want to make that clear. And if you want to add to that too, Brash, you can do that.
Well, dictionaries are very useful when it comes to this. I would say that when it comes to ancient words, I'd always like to see how the ancients described it. And slavery, as far as we know in the Bible, there was no shame inherently attached to it.
Right, great point.
Because everybody was a slave of someone pretty much back then.
Right, and I think, by today's standards, by their standards, it'd just be servitude. It wouldn't be, in the same That's why we have to be so careful how we use the word slave and all this and other. It would be more servitude, like the way according to them, but today might be a different, definition or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm going to quickly just give a definition real quick. So, this is for Skylar's. Maybe he can grow a little bit and correct some of his faulty viewpoints on slavery, especially the definition. Maybe he can change that. So correct that. Hold on, let me get it real quick because I just have to fumble through my stupid definitions. All right, so here, quote, the condition in which one person is owned his property by another and is under the owner's control, especially in involuntary servitude. A civil relationship in which one person has absolute, now there's a key word, absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Citation, freedictionary.com. So if you can't demonstrate that the Mosaic Covenant falls under that, then you can't say there's slavery. And you need to be consistent with that and stop equivocating words. People like, especially Skylar, but also even people like Digital Hammurabi who profess things that they need to be more consistent with. So, there we go. There's the definition from Free Dictionary. And also, I can use other citations from ancient Near East scholars anyway too, and they have their definitions pretty consistent with that. So you can't just equivocate words.
I went over that a little bit with you yesterday with how like even with some scholars, like trying to think of what his name is. Oh yeah, Gregory C. Churka, or whatever. I butchered his name, but they do seem to equivocate a lot on what perpetual possession and permanent slavery. They're not exactly like permanent slavery. They're not exactly the same thing.
No. Right, and like you made a great analogy there. What was that example you gave last night?
I mean, like a perpetual possession and property or something like that.
Yeah, I think you had a good example. Was it Exodus 21:3, right, or something like that?
I'm not sure exactly. I knew I was going to Leviticus 25.
Yeah, you made a point like if they did their ear or something like that.
Oh yeah, I remember what now it is. Yeah, that's Exodus, I believe. Where? Oh wait, no, that's Deuteronomy, I think. But yeah, where they pierce their ear. Like we think of that as that's horrible, and that's like branding them as you would do a cow, but they had a completely different concept with that. It was actually, if anything, a sign of honor. It was a sign of devotion.
Exactly.
Because priests did that. They pierced their ears and stuff like that as a sign of their devotion to God.
Right, and as I brought up last night, it says, here's the key words, if they love their master. Now, it doesn't say if they were coerced by their master, physically forced by their master. It doesn't say if they feuded with their master, you can get your ear pierced. No, it says if they love their master. And the word there in the Hebrew, ahav, and that is, for the most part, it has to do with unconditional love. Like, there's really no conditions attached to it. It's intrinsic. It has nothing to do with, like, sensuality or anything like that. So, I mean, that's another point that needs to be made about these passages. Like Matt Dillahunty, he'll say, well, look at the guy he was forced to, like, get his ear pierced, like get tattooed like he's a piece of meat or something. But he completely excludes the context. Like, the context, he has nothing, he has no cares. He's careless about the context. And that's what usually skeptics do. They really don't care about context. Or the
well, if they cared about context, they wouldn't be atheists.
Exactly. So, yeah, that's great points. If that was perpetuity also, then you can draw maybe even a comparison to those with the master or getting their ear pierced to their master for perpetuity. How do we know that's not happening in Leviticus 25? It just says you can buy them. I'm going to get into that actually with the verbiage and the grammar with that as well. But I'm going to keep on going here. Go ahead. Oh, did you have something to say, or?
Oh no, you can go.
Okay.
I think that needs to be updated or changed. It's a different type of it's a stigma that needs to be changed. Hopefully, that's what I'm trying to do in my channel, is to try to change that stigma of antebellum slavery, happening.
Yeah, I mean, it really pervades through atheist communities that there's this really bad, violent, oppressive, hateful, even racist slavery that's being imposed on people, and that's a caricature of Christianity.
Which is stupid because they didn't have a concept of race back then.
Exactly.
That didn't even really come until the Enlightenment.
Right, and if you want to get down to it, it's really secular regimes that brought into real slavery anyway, that we can consider that was real oppressive, like Stalin. I would say that he constitutes the real criteria of slavery. Like, he fits that perfectly. It wouldn't be the biblical narrative at all, the biblical account. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just this caricature of Christianity where they paint like it's just the worst possible type of involuntary servitude, and they're crushed and they're oppressed, and they're forced against their will, and like they're getting slapped around and all this and that. So obviously those are just caricatures of Christianity. They're not true. It's in your imagination. People like Schuyler have this in their imagination. And either they want that reality to be true for whatever reason is, they want to live a lie, or they are just so brainwashed that they don't even know what's true. So
could be both.
Yeah, it could even be both. Great point.
In the Mosaic Covenant.
Mm-hmm. So, well, we don't really need it to be that type of slavery. We could just talk about the kinds of things that are actually described in there.
Resurrected Eyes. So he knows well about Schuyler. He's had his dealings and back and forth with him. So this is nothing new. He's familiar in this territory. So this would be perfect for Resurrected. And maybe some points you can bounce off of here, Resurrected. It's nice to have you in here, brother. So yeah, we're just we're revisiting an old discussion I had with with Schuyler and Josh. So, and I'm just trying to reflect and see what I could have did better, maybe, and change how I would change things, and bring up points that I wish I could have brought up during this discussion. But this is my baby stages when I was first really getting exposed to the Mosaic Covenant. And this is, actually, Brass is very well versed into that type of culture too. You should check out some of his stuff on his page too, Resurrected. So we'll keep on going here.
Yeah.
Without it, I think it kind of holds up problematic on its own. One thing would be, actually, would you like me to respond to that, or do you want to go to a specific point about it? Or should I just address that point?
Yeah, I'd like you to address, do you view Mosaic, the socioeconomic system, as comparable to antebellum slavery or Egyptian slavery? Is that what atheists are trying to imply, or is it less, like a less toned down version of that?
Well, I'm not going to speak for all atheists, but I'll say from my perspective.
And, I'm going to catch in a second, I'm going to call out Schuyler here in a straight up bald faced lie, and you'll see what a lying turd and dishonest turd he is. So I'm gonna show that in a second here. He makes a claim that is absolutely unbiblical. I'll show you in a second.
Perspective, I'm sure, Doc.
It sounds like there's like an alarm or something. Do you hear that, or?
A little bit.
Dr. Josh will have his own views also, probably very similar to mine. I would say that under the slavery as laid out in Leviticus, depending on the foreign slaves you could keep for life, you could treat with rigor.
There it is. That is a bald-faced lie. That shows what a dishonest turd you are, Schuyler. How dare you just make lies and try to slander the Bible, or try to impugn the credibility of the Scripture just because that you have an agenda against it or you have a bias against it. Nowhere in Scripture does it say that you could treat anyone with rigor. Just because it says to not treat your Israelites with rigor does not mean it's saying you can treat the non-Israelites with rigor. So he just invented that and right into it, straight on the open, arbitrarily, and he made a bald-faced lie. So if you want to comment on that, Brass, you can go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily imply anything like, that they... I've said this before, like in the last time, that it's more of a permission than it is a... It's more of a permission than it is a condolence, you could say. You're permitted to keep them forever, but if you look in it, this parallels the like what we were talking about before with the pierced ear sort of thing. So, well, it could obviously be implying as if this foreign slave decided that he loved, like he ended up having children with the people, like, you know, there, he could, you know, decide to stay there for life on his own accord.
Exactly. So
and of course he'd be passed down, like, he'd be passed down because he'd be a family member.
Right, and we don't even know if these are kinsmen redeemers in Leviticus 25:46 anyway. Because if you look at the whole narrative itself in Leviticus 25, it's talking about Israelites. And all of a sudden you're going to say it's just going to switch the narrative to out of the blue to, like, foreigners that is even more foreign than the already foreigners that come into the Israeli covenant. You know, did you know how many foreigners there are? Brass?
Mm-hmm.
You have this.
Well, I mean, yeah. There's plenty of them, and it's like, I mean, there are multiple interpretations you could take with who the actual foreigners would be. I mean, if you go to Jacob Milgram, who does the Jewish Society publications, he more or less takes that these were talking about exiles or, you know, migrants. And I mean, if you go to a guy like Michael Kaiser Jr., you know, he'll say that this is talking about war captives, you know, and, you know, or as you said last time, this could be talking about foreigners under a treaty.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
So, I mean, there are those possibilities. I mean, if it's war captives, then it makes perfect sense why they wouldn't be given the same term limits.
Right.
The overall point of the whole thing, though, is that you know, that foreigners would, you know, not even care for. They wouldn't want to be a part of it because they don't believe in Yahweh.
Yeah, and that's my point. Yeah.
So, I mean, like, they would, like, yeah, they wouldn't have wanted to do it.
Exactly, and that's probably...
I mean, and here's the thing is, this is what another scholar named Nobuyashi Koichi, you know, he says, this passage identifies 3 sources from where the Israelites may purchase their slaves and maidservants, from neighboring countries, from strangers living among them, and 3 from members of clans of strangers who were born in the Promised Land. All those who become slaves or maidservants become an inheritance for the Israelites and are treated as such. But these people should not be treated harshly like slaves. And
okay.
As commentated by exegetus Wenham and North, slaves in Israelite society would have enjoyed far more freedom than, say, the slaves of a galley ship. True, they were bought, but they were not ordinarily subjected to torture or harsh treatment, though to an extent this would depend entirely on their individual masters. That slaves from surrounding countries or strangers become the property of the Israelites. This indicates that the slaves have a status similar to that of the inherited land. But, you know, a lot of people will say that this is, you know, they're saying, well, they're being stole like land, and they're being owned like land. And I'm saying, like, you do realize that the Israelites, they understood that they didn't own the land. God owned the land.
Right.
They didn't own the people, they owned their labor.
Yep, great point. And I want to expound upon that too. And this is what I brought up in the debate, our last debate, modern day debate, is the same terminology and verbiage that's used in Leviticus 25:46 is also used in Ezekiel 45:28. It says that I am their property, and I will be brought down from generation, the exact same stuff. So you're going to say, if you're going to use that word akuzah in a negative fashion, then you're going to have to apply that to God Himself. And see, it doesn't work out your exegesis or your interpretation there, because God Himself is called property and He is also inherited. So, I mean, good luck with your accusation there, Skylar. Good luck. And here's another point I wanted to make too is, yeah, like if you're going to say these are foreigners already outside the other 3 type of foreigners, I mean, come on. That's ridiculous. We had Sakirs. You got, I mean, there's 2 other types of foreigners too. I forgot. There's Sakirs. There's, gosh, I don't feel like going through the Hebrew right now, but there's like 3 different types of ones out there. Hold on, let me just make sure. I'll probably define one more, but there's several types out there. Hold on. Gators, yeah, so it's Sakirs and Gators. And you had those types. And there's even another one in Isaiah. I'm going to show another one in Isaiah as well. You can just go on and on with the different types of foreigners. In fact, I'm going to get there because I have in my notes right here. So you got Sakirs, Gers, and then you even have another one in Isaiah. Oh, well, I'm just going to find this later. But, yeah, I mean, the point is, like, who the hell's a foreigner? Like, where would you draw the line? What is a foreigner and what is not? With the already foreigners that are in the covenant. So, Resurrected Eyes said Abraham armed his servants in Genesis 1:14. I mean, obviously they had trusting relationship because they don't run away. Great point. And fight for Abraham. Skylar is known for twisting. Yes, he does twist. I just caught him in a blatant lie. So is there something you want to add to that, Brass? You're going to keep on going? Guess we'll keep on going then.
You could pass them on to your children as permanent inheritance. I think those 3 things they do.
Right. So, I mean, the Israelites can pass the Lord on for permanent inheritance. Good. What's the point? What's your point on that? And actually, I have a citation from J. Sklar anyway. This is one of your citations that you used, Brass, J. Sklar.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to quote him, and you'll see here that the word akuzah, possession, what they use for possession, what they call chattel, and he explains in a different way. It's commercial language. Hold on, I'm going to get there. So he says, and so he is a professor of Old Testament, VP of Academics, Covenant Theological Seminary, St. Louis. Page 11 of Tyndale Old Testament Commentary explains akuzah is commercial language that describes people the way you do when the context is commercial. For example, trading a player to another team, as one might trade a stock, or transferring an employee to another location, as one might transfer money. To say that servants are property in Leviticus 25:45 or inherited 25:46 is not to put them on the level of furniture any more than it is to say a sports star traded puts them on the level of a stock. Clearly, this rationale is illustrated in Leviticus 44:28 in regards to God being property inherited. So there you go. There's a citation right from J. Sklar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're not talking. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he also even said this, but even here the same legal safeguards applied, and several laws presume that servants, even those from foreign lands, will be treated as household members and thus able to partake in Israelite celebrations like the Passover and the feasting of Israelite festivals. This was the very opposite of dehumanization.
Oh, great point. Wow. And this was in the same book too, or the same commentary?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I missed that. So this is what I would have brought up during this conversation, what I would have added to it. So if I'm reflecting on back in this conversation, I would have called him out on his lie. I would have brought these points up that you're bringing up, Brass, with the ear. I would have brought up this point with Jay Sklar, which you showed. There's so many that would have ruined the day for Skylar and Josh with their campaign of trying to show slavery in the Old Testament. So we'll keep on going here.
And I would say those three things are actually very similar to the other kind of slavery that you mentioned, because you could, first of all, buy and sell people.
So what? That's part of commercial. That's part of commercial business. I mean, it's corporate. It's part of business. So. What you can buy things. You can buy people in the professional sports. You can buy people in port truck driving, and you can buy people's. So here's another thing that he's conflating is he's saying you can buy people, like you're buying them their person. No, you buy their contracts, and that's what they were. They were 6-year contracts. And here's another thing he conflated as lying about. So we're exposing that again. This is what.
Yeah, and here, even people like Jeffet, like a scholar named Jeffet in 1996, and Dr. Art Lindsay goes over in her little article, 5 Myths About Jubilee. Where like you basically said, people don't own the land but pay off debts with the crops. So. So to mirror this would be to say that they don't own the person, but they own his labor.
Great point. And that needs to be a distinction that needs to be made. That they're not selling the person or buying the person, they're buying their labor. So
what's even funnier about this is that this was even understood during even during antebellum slavery. In fact, it was one of the interpretations that the South always used.
Yes.
So this is not a new interpretation.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the stream. Like, it's this doing it again? Like, why can't I just go online? It's so stupid. No, it says it's online, so we're good. You can buy people. Okay, we're good. So yeah, it's that distinction needs to be made. And no one's buying a person. See, this is what you had in like the antebellum slavery. You were actually, they would be auctioned off, and they would be like auctioned off as property. Like you can violate. You can violate them and do anything you want. So that is an absolute fabrication and caricature of Christianity again with this Skylar's doing it. So. We'll keep it going on. You want to say something else, Brass, or?
Oh, that's good.
You could keep them for life. I believe you could beat them according to Scripture as long as you didn't poke out an eye, knock out a tooth.
Right, and I'm going to really cover this, and I have now my source. So this is what I was bringing up to you last night, Brass. I'm going to show you something. What I'm talking about. And this is in Numbers 35. I think you'll find this very interesting. So I'm going to go to King James so you can just read it. Now, he says he's trying to imply since there's a rod, you can just beat people. And my point is, the rod is no more common practice than, I'm going to show you something. Then an iron, an instrument of iron or brass. And if you smite with this is the same language. Here's the word, same word in the Hebrew, nakah. It's used in Exodus 21:20 through 21. It's there. Exodus 21:20. And then you have a stone. That's another object. And you have wood, a piece of wood in 18. And then you even have there's even a hand. So if you're going to say that's common practice, then you're going to need to show how these are also common practice. And you can see how their claims fall apart there. But I'm going to go to Exodus 21 real quick anyway. Hopefully people can see this. Okay, there you go. Okay, and if a man smite his servant or maid with a rod. Okay, so the shevet. Now, there is a hypothetical object. So, to me, this is just explaining a hypothetical situation, just like it is in Numbers 35. There's nothing here that's indicating this is common practice, like some type of slavery. Like it's a whole systematic slavery that's been going on for hundreds of years or something. So there's nothing in this passage that indicates this. And here's another point that I need to make as well. How do we know this situation wasn't provoked? How do we know the master here wasn't provoked? And I'll give you an example. Look at the very previous passage. Go to verse 19. In 18 through 19, if there's a quarrel, so how do you know there wasn't a quarrel between the master and the Aved? What about?
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, you also have to realize that a rod was, whenever it's used, it's always usually meant as a form of discipline, and that's something that even freed people got. So you can't say that they were being treated any differently than everyone else.
Great point. So even if it is trying to show that there's some type of instruction going on or correction, but that doesn't even necessarily indicate physical punishment, though, because if you read some passages in Proverbs, the rod is just for more like mental, like it's for emotional type of things, like if your rod of your anger or something like that. So you can take it. You have to go out of your way to show this is like arbitrary or like if it wasn't influenced, like he was unprovoked. You have to go out of your way to show that, or if it's just common practice or common law. And the reason why I say that, too, is because, as one way is shown in previous shows, that there's nothing in the Mosaic Law that shows that these are legislative. And if they're not legislative, then they can't be common practice anyway. So that's another point on these passages that that Josh and Skylar completely fail on, and they miss. They miss the mark on this. So, if you want to add to that, then we'll keep on going.
Or kill them. So there are a lot of similarities to it. Is it exactly like modern day American slavery or Egyptian slavery? Not exactly.
Mm-hmm. I would contend the lifelong perpetuity thing, and I think I addressed that in my video. And maybe Josh could even, touch upon this. The word olam used in Leviticus 46.
Leviticus 25:46, olam. I have some important points to make upon this. Maybe you didn't know about brass either. So it's that word in the Hebrew. It's a unique word. And the point I'm going to make here is you need to show that this is systemic. If you're gonna try to claim or try to paint the picture that there is systematic slavery, then you can't apply it to one individual. You have to apply it systematically. And it becomes really troublesome for you because the word olam does not necessarily indicate a continuous process that is in like a generation to generation thing. I'll let Josh talk about it here in a second though.
When it comes to perpetuity, only God Himself is eternal, so only perpetuity would be relevant to Him. So.
Before Josh, can we just read the scripture real quick, Josh, and then that way you can kind of go into it and explain everything.
Sure.
I'll read it real quick, and then you can give us all the thoughts on it, because I want the audience to kind of really be able to hear it and everything like that. So let's go here. Where did I have it at? I should have this up already. So this is Leviticus 25, verses 44 through 46. You've heard me quote this quite a bit on my channel.
Oh, whoops. I wanted to... we're on the right one. Good.
Yes.
It says, however, you may purchase male or female slaves from among the foreigners who live among you. You must also purchase the children of such resident foreigners, including those who have been born in your land. You may treat them as your property. This is also how the other kind of slavery was done. It was
treat them like property. Where's that in the? I don't see that in the passage at all.
Which one was that again?
He's reading Leviticus 25:44 through 46, and there's nothing in there that says treating people like property. So he just injected his own lie. It's like it's a fabrication. There's nothing there saying that you can treat people like property. It says you can purchase. So Leviticus 25:46.
Yeah, it says, as for your male and female slaves whom you may have, you may acquire male and female slaves from the pagan nations that are around you. That's 44.
Yeah. But he's saying there's somewhere in these passages that are saying you can treat people like property. There's nothing there saying that.
Yeah, let me see. Oh, yeah. So, then too, it is out of the sons of the sojourners who live as aliens among you that you may gain acquisition, and out of their families whom are with you, whom they will have produced in your land, they also may become your possession. You may even bequeath them to your sons after you to receive as possession. You can use them as permanent slaves, but in respect to your countrymen, the sons of Israel, you shall not rule over severity over one another. And remember, it says you may. It doesn't say you shall. Sons of Israel.
Great point, Brass. And this is one of the points I made in my other streams. And that is, if you look up what they call the... oh man, I forgot. It's a system of how they conjugate verbs, and they have different moods of possibility. And in Leviticus 25:46, the verb there is in a subjunctive, and it means a mood of hope or possibility or may. It's like a may. You may. So it's definitely not indicative or something that is definite. There's nothing definite in the context. It's the pod.
Or saying that's a good thing.
Yeah, and it's the podosis. That's what it's called. It's a classification of verbs of possibility. So yeah, I mean, Skylar already failed that one again. Great point.
People are treated as property. Passing them on to your children is permanent inheritance. You may treat your slaves like this, but the people of Israel, your relatives, you must never be treated this way. Go ahead, Dr. Dosh.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things that I would say. So the word olam,
up, Dr. Josh. So, I mean, I've had my run-ins with him and my interactions with him. I think we're on a good terms as far as like personally, but I have no respect for his hermeneutics. I mean, it comes to scripture and analysis of scripture and context and interpretation of scripture. I think it's horrible. And even Resurrected Eyes has exposed this as well. I think he's a fine guy. I think, yeah, sure. But when it comes to scholarship, I think his scholarship is far left. It's like the bottom of the barrel of liberal scholarship. And I mean, that's just the truth. And if that offends him, then, you know, so be it. But I do think he's a pretty good guy, though. And I think we're on good terms personally. We've even shared stuff, you know, and exchanged stuff. So I have no hostility towards him personally. That's fine. But as far as his scholarship goes, it's the bottom of the barrel. And his little buddy Skylar too. I think he's dishonest as you can get. And I've shown that already. I've shown his lies. He just arbitrarily makes lies and invents lies on the fly. He's no different than Tom Jump and some other atheists. So maybe that is just something that's common among atheists, I guess. Who knows? Atheism is a mental disease, to be honest.
No, don't do that.
So yeah, we can. You want to keep going? You want to say something, Brass?
Well, yeah, I just want to, call you out on that. Don't say it's a mental disease, because that does perpetuate a stigmatism towards people that have mental illness.
I mean, like a mental disorder, maybe, or something like that.
No, just not go there.
All right. Just to be honest, though, there are studies out there that show that, but it's not necessarily a stigma, but people need to be aware of people's mental, of their mental properties and how they see things. If there is a mental issue, people need to be aware of that. I mean, I can show you so many studies that actually validate that. But I wasn't trying to demean anyone or try to make fun of them or anything, but people need to be aware of who they listen to, because they might not be all there. And I mean, that was my point.
All right.
Yo, what's up, this one guy? Nice to see you in here at work. So, yeah, I wasn't meant to, bring people down that have mental disorders and stuff. No, and that wasn't my intention again. I guess that's how things get blown out of proportion sometimes in my other streams as well, but oh well.
It really just has the idea of an exceptionally long period of time, right? So the idea of, I think, eternality is something that is probably a little anachronistic in the way that we use it. So you hear this a lot.
But how do we know your way, Josh, isn't anachronistic either? And the point I'm making here, I'm going to make this point here, I think he might address this or might cover this, I don't know, is the word olam. If you're going to have to show it systematically in a continuous process that is inherited down from family to family. And what you're trying to argue is individual. And to me, that even undermines your own argument. So, if you want to add to that, Brash, you can go ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's not really much of a big deal, because this goes into like I said with the pierced ear thing. Yeah, you may bring them, take them for life in the same way that you might be able to bring a Hebrew for life if they want to be there.
Exactly.
So it doesn't say anything about coercing them into that sort of position.
Right, and that's what I seen Skylar trying to paint. He was trying to imply that, and if you got to call him out on this stuff, and you can see how dishonest.
There's nothing in there that says that they're forced to be there for life.
Right, and that's a great point. But also, olam itself, you can just have your own presuppositions about it, but leave it out of the text. You need to tell us that people were enslaved generation after generation. That's what it means, olam. And that was my point here talking to Josh. So you'll hear that when I bring this up.
In my family, there's a small group that have, what are they called?
Hey, Praise, can you mute your mic for just while Josh's speaking? We're getting a lot of background interference from your mic.
My bad.
That's okay. No, it's nowhere. I just don't want the
No,
background
I'm
interference.
not. I'm just kidding.
They're, I can't remember the guy's name that did it, but it's like, hell doesn't exist in the biblical text. And so they reinterpret Ion, Ionos, Olam, these types of words that deal with long periods of time.
To me, that's actually problematic for you, Josh, because you're going to have to show how it's systematic. If it's not systematic slavery, then what the hell are you arguing? Where is the slavery? Slavery, by really, the implications of slavery really calls into it actually invokes systematic. It's systematic. So if it's not systematic, then your point's refuted anyway. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's not systematic anyway, because it's not like this is a shall, you shall make them this. This is more of a permission.
Great point, yeah.
So, I mean, this would, we wouldn't even know how much this would actually happen.
Right. And, where today, if this was a systematic thing, Olam, if it was from generation to generation of a systematic slavery, where the hell are the Jews doing it? Even in the last centuries before this, I don't see them even having anything even close to whatever the Mosaic covenant. So I don't see anything there, even in history, that indicates a systematic slavery. So, or that exists beyond the Mosaic covenant. If it only exists in the Mosaic covenant, then we know it's not systematic, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is like they know, like you never see Jesus say that they were perpetual slaves to them as well.
Right. Or anyone, even the apostles, we didn't see anything with that. Even in the Targums and all the commentary they've had, the commentary over years, I've never seen anything them talking about perpetual slavery anywhere. With you have the Midrash commentary. There's so much commentary out there. It's pretty interesting too. Like Rashi, you'll never see Rashi talking about perpetual slavery, and some of these other guys.
Scriptures, for example, where Ion is like a period of time, even though it's an exceptionally long period of time. It's a period of time that ends, right? And so they say, we'll see here. Where you have eternal fire, eternal hellfire, or whatever, that this is actually it's hellfire that ends after a certain period of time, even though it might be a very long period of time. I think exegetically, it's anachronistic to read that sort of very subtle.
Yeah, I mean, I would say also your context of slavery is also anachronistic, and the points I just mentioned really demonstrate that.
Understanding of eternality into that in some cases.
Yeah, and actually, so have you studied like the Jewish commentary, Brass, about Olam and stuff?
A bit, not a whole lot.
Well, I have some commentary from different Jewish scholars. And I was prepared to show this in the debate, but me and Jill and was against them too, and I was going to address this point, and some of the Jewish scholars were saying that the Olam there, it just means from to the 50th year, what they call Pentecost. So Olam only existed as long as Pentecost. So. Hold on, let me make sure of that real quick. Because actually, I have a citation for this, so I think this will be productive for this stream. Yeah, so I have a couple different citations here. So the Hebrews were permitted to pass servants of the nations as inheritance to the next generation until their debts were paid off, which is the meaning of olam in Leviticus 25:46. Jewish rabbi Hamik Davar, in his commentary in Leviticus 25:44, points out when Israelites purchased foreigners, it was meant to transform, not enslave. Quote, "It is a mitzvah, meaning good deed, to purchase them out of idolatry." But here's another thing: the Hebrews were permitted to pass servants of the nations as inheritance to the next generations until their debts were paid off. The text does not mean they were permanent possessions, but is an explanation as to why they didn't go out in the 7th year of release or the Jubilee as the Hebrews do. The reason being that their debts are not canceled. Evidence for this comes from some of the Jewish commentaries, which interpret it in this way. Mechilta of Rabbi Ishmael Misfetum, 2 Kedushin 15b, and Targum Jonathan in Exodus 21:6. Note that the Targum Jonathan is one of the earliest extant commentaries on this passage. This same understanding was applied to the servant who voluntarily chose to serve his master past the date of emancipation. Quote, in subsequent Jewish tradition, the statement that he shall be a slave unto you forever was interpreted to mean for the rest of the master's life or a jubilee. So that's what it is, jubilee year. Dwayne L. Christensen, I21.9, okay, 1 through 21.9, volume 6A, Word Biblical Commentary, Dallas, Word Incorporated, 2001, page 321. I mean, there's other ones too, though. So Sarna, Nahum Sarna, he's like one of the prestigious scholars out there, Hebrew scholars, and he goes, but according to rabbinic interpretation, the new term of service ends at the next Jubilee year or at the death of the master, whichever comes first. So you have Sarna there. And this is a Torah commentary, Philadelphia Jewish publication, 1991, page 120. So, if you want to add anything to that, Brass, you can, so maybe that will be some information that people didn't know about.
Well, yeah, I mean, there was always many ways that they could get out of it. Like, if the master was dying, like what they could do is that they could work taking care of the master, and they would, once the master died, that would be considered a debt paid off, through helping them out. There was also other deals, like if their foreign friends or whatever were able to pay off the owners, then they would be free there. So, I mean, there was practically, they were there wasn't much of a distinction. The only distinction between the two is that because they're not, they're not believers in Yahweh, of course they're not going to be under, the covenant's rules.
Exactly.
Like the Jubilee means nothing to them because they don't have a belief in Yahweh and that He redeemed them.
Great point.
So, I mean, yeah, it's not a matter of bigotry, it's a matter of theology. They probably would have loved the fact that they're not included in it.
Right, exactly.
But, I think another thing that people forget is that there was no shame attached to being a slave, really. Not like how it was, I mean, you could say it was a status degradation, but it wasn't one that was inherently met with shame.
Right.
Because, Moses was considered a slave of God, and his people were considered slaves of God. That's obviously they weren't saying that, they're all, what's the word, they're not all lower than dirt or whatever. It's just saying that, it's just saying the fact that that's just how it goes with the social ladder.
Exactly. And Abraham's another example. He had plenty of slaves, or debt slaves. That's what they really are anyway. It's just that they're working off debt for a contract that they willingly chose to do, like with their own choice to do that. It was voluntary. It was voluntary, and that's the point I'm trying to make here. There's nothing that Josh can provide, or either Skylar, to show that this was involuntary. So,
well, you can only purchase what's being sold.
Yeah.
It makes no sense to say you took something like a candy bar or whatever. It's by force. But it makes perfect sense if someone's selling you it. Well, who would be selling it?
Right. This is why it's a business transaction. We're not talking. They're trying to make this personal with business. They don't understand the difference between commercial and personal, and they conflate the two. And also, they try to strawman really the text, though, and they try to make it look like it's institutionalized slavery, and it continues on and on. There's nothing there in the text that indicates that.
Mm-hmm. So, the bigger thing about a passage like Leviticus 25 is everything else that's around it. So, for example,
so the chat is saying there's some type of dinging noise. Is that is on your side, Brass? Do you hear that, or is it you don't even hear that? Oh, there we go. It's gone now. I don't know what that was.
All right, that better?
Yeah.
All right, it was probably just something on my end.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
For example, the use of achuzah. Achuzah is landed property, right? It's the word that's used.
And you've made some good points there, Brass, with achuzah. And I thought, Ezekiel 44:28 is another great example of achuzah as well.
For landed property,
yeah.
And it's used.
But here's the thing, he'll go into, the whole, well, they're being bought and sold like land, but I'm like, you idiot, the Israelites don't believe that they own the land. So,
yeah, God owns the land.
Yeah, so they wouldn't own the people anyway.
Exactly.
The people weren't what was being sold, it was their work.
Right, and that's the point we've been trying to express to Skylar and Josh over and over and over, and they just, for some reason, don't want to accept that. And, that's just a sad reality of it, unfortunately.
Used specifically for that property that stays in the family, that stays with the individual. It's specifically for that, and it's the fact that it's used here. And let me just.
So all these, after reassessing, of this last year, look how much we could have brought. We could have actually, if you were part of this too, look how much we could have brought to this conversation. It would have been a whole different conversation.
Yeah, yeah, it's because of the fact that they had you on a 2-on-1 advantage here.
Yeah.
Where they could gang up on you.
Yeah, they're trying to hornswoggle me, and it becomes into like a crap fest, like a mudslinging kind of a little bit. I call him a douchebag, but he said for me to eat a bag of something. I don't want to say it on air really, but so how am I demonized for just calling someone a douchebag?
A bag of Richards?
Yeah, I want to get to that coming up, though, so I want to keep on going. Just address some of these points. We're just going right through this like a train. This is so easy to go through now.
Here, the fact that it's used here with inheritance and giving as inheritance to your children. However it is that you want to read it, be it for an exceptionally long period of time that encompasses the lives of 2 individuals, 3 individuals, however you want to do it. I mean, I think the material point here is that Leviticus 25.
Well, I mean, really, the burden of proof is on Josh here to show that it extends beyond one person. And it extends, it's institutionalized slavery over generation after generation after generation. I mean, that's his burden of proof, and there's nowhere he's even came close to meeting that burden of proof.
Given its complex nature in the Pentateuch, as far as theories about redactional development and the debate between that and Exodus 21, where do we have the 6 years or do we have 49 years, whatever. The juxtaposition and the contrasting here of...
For some reason that noise is back. I have no idea what that is. It's like a fire alarm that needs to get a battery. It's like one of those type of deals. There, it's gone now, so...